You've got questions, we've got answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box, where trauma-trained therapists tackle real questions from real people. I'm your host, Lindsay, bringing you grounded insights you can actually use, brought to you by Therapy Utah. Another episode of the Therapist Question Box. We are here to answer your tough mental health questions. Whether you're asking for you or for a friend, we are here to answer. Today I have with me John Bowers. John, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
John, tell us a little bit about you. I want you to introduce you today.
Okay. Well, I'm a therapist here at Therapy Utah. I mostly specialize in sexual addictions, but I also work a lot with people who experience trauma or scrupulosity. I also work with a lot of people who are in the LGBTQ community, especially when they're navigating faith and feelings. So those are some of my things that I prefer to work with.
Nice. So, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And tell us about, who's John? Tell us about you from like a personal perspective.
Yeah. I love to see growth, and I love growing things, and maybe there's a commonality between
John, what do you grow? Because you've given me kefir, so I know you grow kefir. But
I grow
what
bacteria.
Else? You do grow bacteria. I know you do, and I now do too because of you.
Yeah, great. Well, just growing up, we always had a garden and a little orchard, and we lived out in the deserts of Arizona, so it was a constant battle. But we grew everything that there's some things that just never worked, like berries, just could not do it. But
too hot.
Yeah.
Too hot for berries in Arizona.
But grapes, any kind of citrus tree, figs, we grew corn, squash. We would make our own salsa from things in the garden, eggplant, just all sorts of things. But we also had a little ranch in the mountains that had this weird little microclimate where you could grow a lot of things that you normally couldn't grow in Arizona. So we grew apples and peaches and pears and nectarines and almonds and cherries, all sorts of things.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're a spoiled produce guy because you've had the real thing from the ground, not from the store, right?
It is especially salient with orange juice.
Okay.
Because I'm under the unpopular opinion that orange juice should be orange and it should be sweet instead of this like super tart, like flat.
Is that unpopular? Yellowish. Do people want flat, yellowish?
That's what they're buying.
Orange juice.
They don't. There's not a demand for the pulpy stuff, I guess.
Okay, that's true. My kids, when I serve them pulp, they do feel like they need to stage a revolution because there's pulp. And I'm like, but turns out that's what oranges have in them, right? So here we are.
Yeah. And that's
John, you didn't mention that you also are a great baker. I've actually had some of your recipes. I think it was banana pudding. Yeah. That was fantastic. So you got that skill set too.
Thank you.
You do. It's awesome. So, but today we're focusing on your skill set as a therapist. So thank you for being here and talking about boundaries.
Happy to be here.
It's an interesting question that we have, and one that I think can be a little bit confusing to people. So we'll go ahead and launch right in. Here's the question. I'm scared people will leave if I set boundaries. What do I do?
I hear that all the time. And it makes a lot of sense because we really want to have connection with people, and our nervous system equates connection with safety. So if there's any threat to that, there's this big intimidation, this part of us that comes up that tries to prevent anything that could get in the way of a relationship.
Yes.
And when we set boundaries, we're declaring some kind of expectations of this other person. And a lot of us, myself included, and this isn't a blanket statement, mom and dad, but in some respects, I think all of us were taught some lessons around whether or not we could hold boundaries. A very common one that I experienced was I had to give a hug to whoever I was asked to give a hug to. Which,
whether you wanted to or not.
Right, yeah. Okay. Normally, like, most people are healthy and fine and safe, whatever. But I remember as a kid being really uncomfortable. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do this. Or eating my vegetables. I had to eat them. It wasn't negotiable. And so there's pressure on me to to go along with whatever the louder voice, the bigger person was saying.
Okay.
So, and I don't see those as horrible parenting, devices. And there are messages that we internalize growing up that it is very rare that, at least when we start holding boundaries, we don't feel guilty about it. So if I was to hold a boundary and this person was pushed away, then it's my fault and I did something wrong.
Got it.
Or I wasn't flexible, or I wasn't charitable or loving or graceful, whatever. There's a million things that could come through your mind to justify the status quo.
Yes. So it's so interesting. First of all, interesting that you didn't want to eat vegetables out of your garden because you're a garden lover, you told us. But that's okay. Maybe as a kid.
To be fair, the salad that I was served was not homegrown.
Okay, there you go. So see, you're a vegetable snot. And it's fine. You can be a vegetable snot. It's totally fine.
I've been reformed, like I'm accepting.
That's great. I love it. Accepting of store-bought vegetables with the rest of us earthlings.
Right.
Thank you, John.
Yes.
Bless you.
Yes, I've condescended to the peasantry.
That's right. You got to do what you got to do. So, but I love that example of I was told I had to eat vegetables. I was told I had to hug somebody that I didn't maybe want to. But that is what in your family were the rules. So that's what you do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we accommodate because we're children, we're younger, and the relationship matters. Right.
Yeah.
Or we are adults and the relationship matters. So we accommodate in ways that we're maybe not comfortable with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another element with that, especially with children, is that we don't have a strong sense of trust in ourselves. And so we abdicate and give that trust to someone else so that they can make the right decision.
Yes, absolutely.
So as a child, that makes a lot of sense because you have to rely on your parents to keep you alive. But a lot of us don't mentally grow out of that all the way. And we just assume that if this other person is confident or assertive or taking action, that they must be in the right. And so
so we go along with
them.
it.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting that we don't really grow out of it? And I also don't think we're really modeled boundaries very well.
No.
Do you agree with that?
No, and there are cultural things. I think different cultures have different expectations around boundaries that, like other virtues, can become a vice if there aren't boundaries around.
Yes.
That principle.
Give me some examples of that.
Yeah.
What would you say?
A great example for me would be service. In our community, there's this big emphasis on serving other people. And growing up, there would be a responsibility for me once a month on a Sunday to go around and collect donations from people. And every Sunday, since I was like 9 years old, I've had a migraine. And every Sunday, there's all this pressure on me to go out, and it was super, super hot, and our car often didn't have air conditioning, and just be going out, and I would be absolutely miserable trying to do something that was charitable, but in the end, I felt resentful toward these people that they couldn't just figure out a different way to submit this donation.
Right.
But I was the one that was suffering, and there wasn't a recognition of it. It was just, that's what you're going to do.
Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
interesting. I love that you use that example and that it's cultural, right?
Yeah.
I remember the first time I read a book and it was talking about selflessness.
Right.
Right. And saying, it actually is not healthy to be selfless. Like,
right.
And sometimes we wear this selflessness like a badge of honor, and we say, I do only things for other people. And in this book, the author just said, wait a minute, like we've got that all wrong. Why is that? Why are we wearing that as a badge of honor? Right.
Yeah.
So kind of that same idea that culturally this is the right thing to do, but it wasn't working for you, clearly.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't helping. You were not okay.
Yeah.
But you kept having to do it and then started resenting, right? The people that you had to serve. So how does that relate to boundaries? That if we're not boundaried, that we can end up resenting the people?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, and with that selflessness, there's this idea that we're going to grow and become better and that sort of thing, which can happen if you act in a way that is charitable towards others. You can connect with them better. And if you don't have a limit to what you're willing to do or how much you're able to give, then your own needs aren't going to be met. And we can go back and forth on what kind of needs people have and where their limits are. But the concept is you can't draw from an empty well.
Yep.
And if you're constantly just pouring out your water to other people, eventually you're going to die of thirst yourself.
Yep.
And a lot of times we, whether consciously or unconsciously, we have expectations of some kind of reciprocity. Like, I'm going to give to you, so you're going to give to me. And if that doesn't play out, then a lot of times we'll harbor this frustration with this other person.
Yes.
Or that this person continues to rely on us when they could be solving their own problem.
Yes.
And so now I'm living to solve someone else's problems rather than addressing my own.
Yes. And what's interesting, though, is we have this expectation, and often the other person doesn't even know what the expectation is, right?
Completely unaware.
Like, wait a minute, where was that expectation and why
Yeah.
are they upset? But we have in our mind, wait a minute, there's this reciprocity and this is what you should do.
Yeah, this is common sense.
Right.
And unfortunately, common sense is really individual based on your own experiences. So for me, like there are certain comments that I don't make because I know that they've really hurt me when I've heard them.
Yes.
But there are other people that have never been on the receiving end of such a comment. And so they're just blissfully unaware walking through life making these comments that kind of this bull in the china shop. And we can get really frustrated with those people. But honestly, there's so much ignorance that it's not, an immoral thing. But being clear is how we can resolve those issues and prevent further ones.
Yes. Amen. Being clear is how we resolve those issues and prevent further ones.
Yeah.
And guess where that responsibility lies?
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right, within ourselves, John, right?
Yes, yeah.
I have to do that hard work of
Yeah.
saying, okay, this is what does and doesn't work for me.
Right.
Why is that so uncomfortable?
I think we really don't want to be seen as disagreeable. And a part of that, again, is cultural. There are a lot of studies on different personality traits, and Utah specifically ranks the highest in America on agreeableness.
Wow.
So it is culturally expected that you will go along with things, or that you'll be accommodating, or that you won't be confrontational or instigate some kind of conflict, whatever. And that one results in underlying feelings not being addressed, but also there's a lot of passive aggressive attempts to make things better.
Yes.
And we can think, if I was observing these things, I would interpret this silent treatment or these indirect comments as this person is really hurting and I need to change whatever I need to change. But that's just not how people work, which is infuriating, and that's the reality of things.
Turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah, not how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you just said is really, I've never heard that, first of all, that Utah ranks the most agreeable state in the nation. I don't know that that's a badge of honor.
Right. We also rank the lowest in neuroticism, which is expression of emotions.
Which probably is one and the same. Wouldn't
Right.
you think
Yeah.
that those go
Yeah.
side by side?
Yes.
Like I
Certainly
can't
can be.
express myself because I'm too agreeable, because
Yeah.
that's what culturally we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Walk in lockstep and do the thing and act in the way we're supposed to, right?
Yeah. There's this, I always hear this scripture, it comes up, of contentions of the devil. And so anything that seems remotely like a conflict or an argument or a disagreement, people will withdraw because I don't want to be, listening to the devil.
Right.
So there's a religious layer on top of just regular
layer.
American culture.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. So it's ingrained. That's really what I'm hearing. It's ingrained. And
Yeah.
here's the thing that I think is important to remember is that when we are not boundaried, we just want to blame the other person.
Yeah.
And say, you know what? They are the worst. They do
Right.
this and they show up this way. But the truth is, we're often not being boundaried with them.
Right. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, we play the victim card. Super easy to fall into that. We see ourselves as the martyr. We can see ourselves as a rescuer trying to solve the problems, but it's never enough. And so we kind of see ourselves as helpless.
Yep.
Because this person should be doing XYZ or not doing ABC.
Right. So when you're in that situation, boundaries are necessary, right? You're
Yeah.
feeling frustrated. And so boundaries are needed. Can you let's just talk about what a boundary is and what it is not. Because
Yeah.
I find that with my clients all the time. They'll say,
Right.
I'm going to put a boundary on her. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You actually can't do that.
Right.
So will you explain a little bit about what a boundary is and what it is not?
Yeah. A lot of times when people are learning about boundaries or trying to figure out what that would look like for them, it ends up being a wall. You're not going to do this thing. You're going to stop doing this thing.
That's right.
Or you will do this thing. And I think it's human nature to want to rebel against anything that sounds like that because we don't like being told what to do. We don't like being controlled. We like to be in charge of our own lives.
Right.
It makes a lot of sense. And when you're on the giving end of that boundary, it can feel like that's what I have to do. But I like to see boundaries as a corral to have, to keep livestock alive. We have to keep them within some kind of safe space, especially if there are predators around or dangerous terrain. We want to be able to keep them monitored, but within this environment where our relationship with them can exist. Similarly, with people in our lives, there are expectations that need to be upheld. So I'm going to expect you to not cuss me out or say terrible things about my mom or punch me in the face.
Unless you deserve it. No, I'm just kidding.
You know what?
I'm just kidding. You're right. You
Cut
would
the
never
cameras.
deserve it. No, you're right. Like there's levels of decency that you just expect in a relationship, right?
Yeah.
I love that idea of the corral. Like it's how we can engage with them in an environment that works for them and works for us.
Right.
Right? Yes. So for me to do that with somebody else, when there is a boundary that's needed, the boundary then is about me, not about them.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about what you are going to do.
Right. Or not do.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. So I've talked about this before, but I had an experience where I had a situation where I felt like these individuals, I was so frustrated with them. And I remember thinking they just shouldn't show up this way. That it's so wrong. And I just kept going back to like, why are they showing up this way? And why are they showing up this way? And I was frustrated and I talked to my husband about it and I would try to figure it out. And the reality is people get to show up exactly how they want.
Yeah.
And guess what needed to change? My relationship with them.
Yeah.
So I got really clear. I didn't like the way they were showing up. And so I needed to change my interaction with them.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is when I decided to change my interaction with them, I held a boundary. Guess what changed? Everything.
Yeah.
The people didn't change. They stayed the same way they were, but I showed up differently because I wasn't okay with it.
Yeah.
But I was really okay pointing the finger for a really long time and saying that's like horrible behavior. Why would they do that? That's not okay. But it was me that had to say, you know what? I'm actually not going to engage with them in that way. The relationship is going to change because I don't like that. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Right?
I think fundamentally you learned that when you set boundaries, you find peace.
Amen.
That
Amen.
we so often are seeking peace in our relationships. And so we accommodate. And sooner or later we get to this negative peace where it's the absence of tension in the relationship, but it's at the cost of yourself. It's the cost of who you are. And I tell people all the time, I believe that boundaries are the fundamental ingredient of self-respect. If you don't hold boundaries for yourself, then you're communicating to the world that you don't care about how you're treated or that you don't feel like you're worth treating or respecting in a particular way. So when we hold boundaries, that can create the tension in these relationships. People that aren't used to you holding boundaries will often resist and test you on it and push back. So there's got to be some preparation ahead of time for accepting that they might not be happy. And I'm not controlling you. I honestly want this relationship to be as healthy as possible. And in order to have a loving and healthy, mutually respectful relationship with you, I'm going to need to do this. Or if this continues, I'm going to need to do this. And that can put some tension in the relationship, but you're pulling in a healthy direction where there's that presence of justice, that right things are going to be done and wrong things are going to be outlawed.
I like
or
that.
just not tolerated.
Well, and I love that idea of understanding that when there is a boundary, that there will be some discomfort potentially.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's actually not our job to manage that, right? The outcome, we can't control their response. Whenever I have a client that will talk about it and say, but I don't want to do this because then I'm worried they'll feel this way.
Yeah.
I always think, oh, when they say that, you're not on your side of the street, my friend.
Right. Yeah.
That's actually not your business. Your business is you and the way you show up and honoring that, and the way that they choose to experience it, react, that's their business and not yours. And I think sometimes we get that confused.
Right. Yeah. So this idea of, if I hold a boundary, they might leave. That is a risk.
It is.
And you have played a role in that in some way.
And
now,
by the way, that's hard.
It is
I
hard.
mean, even you just saying that, that reality is hard, and probably a reason a lot of people don't have a boundary, because they're like, the relationship is worth more than them leaving or my feeling on this.
Right.
So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
And that's something to consider.
Yep.
I think there is a tendency for some people in their particular attachment style that they're going to ghost or they're going to cut the person off, because whether they think that this person is incapable of respecting them or boundaries, or if they just can't have that conversation, that's preferable to being put in a position where you're uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another part that's important to remember, and something that with my example I gave to you, is that often, and maybe not often, but sometimes you don't have to talk about your boundary. It just is something that you know, right? So for me, in that example I gave, actually, I never had a conversation with the other person.
Yeah.
I didn't have to have a conversation. I just knew that for me, I had to show up differently in the relationship.
You let yourself off the hook.
100%. So I think sometimes that's a really important reminder.
Oh, yes.
That I don't need to say, hey, John, I'm not going to hang out with you anymore because of X, Y, Z.
Right.
But I choose to say, you know what? This is my boundary and I feel uncomfortable in this way. And so I'm actually not going to have the relationship be the same as it was.
Yeah.
And that's a really important point, I believe.
Yeah. There are internal boundaries.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to let this person impact me. And what do I need to do or accept in order for that to stop negatively impacting my life?
Yes, exactly. I think those are some of the most important boundaries, because then we honor ourselves and we're saying, you know what? I'm honoring me. I'm not making this big declaration of what I will and won't do, but gosh, I'm trusting myself. And trusting ourselves really matters.
Yeah.
As you were talking about your example of going and getting donations on a Sunday, right? You're a kid, so you don't really have that option.
Yeah.
But as an adult, guess what? We do.
Yeah.
We get to decide what we will and won't do, how we will show up, and what it looks like for us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a psychologist that I love named Gaber Mate, and he has this, he in one of his books, he said that if you have to choose between guilt and resentment, choose guilt every time, because resentment is soul suicide. And if you think
Can you say that again?
Yeah. If you have to choose between guilt and resentment, choose guilt every time, because resentment is soul suicide.
Wow.
And think about it, like it's really hard to have a loving relationship with someone that you have resentment for. And if you're expecting this person to be someone they're not, then you're going to hurt your own feelings over and over and over again. You can give them opportunities to present in a different way or treat you in a different way, whatever. But fundamentally, there's got to be a point where you accept that they're showing up as they truly are.
Yep.
And if someone abandons the relationship because you hold them to some kind of standard, there's a really good chance that was on the brink of happening anyway.
That's a great thought, that it may have been happening anyways, but in the process, you're honoring yourself. As you were talking, what I kept thinking is, people will show you who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Believe them.
Yeah.
You know, that saying that people will show you who they really are, and believe them, right? It's
Yeah.
okay. And sometimes, again, there are people in our lives that, you know, the relationship may need to change. It may need to be altered because they're showing you who they are,
Yeah,
right? So
right.
believe them and then decide what feels healthy for you
Yeah.
and move forward in a healthy, and honestly, again, the more I think about it and the more I talk about boundaries, boundaries are very loving.
Yes.
For both parties.
Yeah.
How are they loving? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, I don't think that it is kind to be unclear. And we have this idealized concept of love that needs to be unconditional. And you can have unconditional positive regard for every person, that there's something in them that is good, that they have some good intention, whatever. But if you don't have conditions in your relationship, for example, you could have a horrific situation on your hands.
That's right.
And so having conditions for a relationship actually allows this other person to grow and to step up, to recognize where their blind spots are, and to be able to have an actualized loving connection.
Yes.
And you're not going to be fostering resentment at that point because you are clear. And now they have the information they need to make an educated decision rather than operating in ignorance.
Oh, it's so true that really boundaries don't push the right people away.
Right.
They don't, but they really clarify who can stay in your life and what it looks like.
Yeah. And it's not to say that you can't have grace.
Absolutely.
As we know, most people don't have a very strong concept or education around boundaries. So there may be some slip ups with that, or it may be clumsy, or there may be pushback. You're going to be kind of sloppy when you start holding boundaries too. So we all got to be a little loving, a little flexible, but that's not to say that you try to hold a boundary and you don't follow through, because you have to have the commitment to the boundary and follow through in order for it to be respected.
Absolutely.
A lot of people say, well, I said this and then they did that anyway, so it didn't work. There has to be a consistent commitment to the boundary.
Yes. Yes. And again, recognizing you held the boundary and they did or did not do whatever.
Yeah, they didn't respect it.
Right. But that's still their choice. So then you get to say, okay, what do my boundaries look like now? They didn't respect it. So then maybe I need to make some adjustments.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And again, instead of pointing the finger and staying in victim, we actually can say, okay, I'm in charge here. It's okay. And I love the idea of grace. Amen to that. I think sometimes when people hear, I've heard this, I don't know if you have, but, they went to therapy and now they're all boundaried and they've got all these boundaries, right? It's like very negative. Yeah. But I think that same thing, like when we're learning boundaries, when we're having somebody talk to us about their boundaries, to give grace. Yeah. It's messy and we're going to probably misstep. They are probably going to misstep. So give grace.
Yeah. I think a really good way of avoiding that kind of misunderstanding is when you're holding a boundary to express a benefit of the doubt to the other person. So to say, I don't think that you're trying to hurt my feelings. I don't think that you meant to stress me out or whatever. I think that you're trying to be a good friend. I think you're trying to be an involved parent, whatever it is. To let them know that you see the good in them. And then to say, and when this happens, I feel this. And you can say, when I don't like it when you do this. So, or I'm not happy when this happens. You don't have to be super like explaining everything, but if you express to the other person that you see the good in them and that the foundation of this boundary is that you want connection with them, that you want closeness, that you want to foster an authentic, loving relationship with them, it's a lot easier to hear that. Yes. And with that, with boundaries being kind, when we don't have boundaries, we're not showing up as our authentic selves. And so this person is connecting with a mask. They're not connecting with a legitimate person.
Absolutely.
So we don't feel seen, we don't feel loved, and this person is living in a delusion. So that relationship's not going to be that beneficial.
Well, and it's not going to have the authenticity and depth that it could, because it's not honest. It's not based in honesty, right? I'm reading a book right now by Martha Beck called The Way of Integrity. And her whole premise is that when we don't live in integrity, we suffer.
Yeah.
And as I read it, I thought, okay, there's not going to be that much there. Oh gosh, there's a lot of ways that we don't live in integrity. And that's one of them, is when we are not honest with ourselves or honest with others, right? And like you said, the relationship suffers when we choose to not live in honesty about what's going on for us or for the other person. So John, with all of that being said, so many great nuggets here. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think, okay, I want to make sure that we talk about this?
Yeah. There are a couple principles that I think are really important. One is we don't always know what kind of boundary we need to set or what things need to change. I think if we listen to our bodies and pay attention in our interactions, a lot of times our bodies will tell us what needs to change. Something will be said, or something will be done, or something will be asked of us, or whatever. Our body will have a reaction. So pay attention to, do I get a pit in my stomach when this thing happens? Or do I feel agitated? Do I have this rush of heat? Or do I feel like I'm shuddering? Whatever. So pay attention to that.
Pay attention to your body.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also, we catastrophize all the time, especially in relational situations. So your mind will go to the worst case scenario when you're beginning to set boundaries, which, technically that could happen. Technically, I could become paralyzed and develop MRSA and have a horrible life after this. And that would be the worst case scenario.
There's a lot of bad that could go on.
Yeah. But it's not honest. If you're committed to truth, there's a good chance that they'll accept it. There's a good chance that they won't have this big reaction, or that you can talk it through. So really try to adopt the idea that people are generally going to accept what you have to say. So
I love that.
And
going with that mindset is going to change it. If I'm thinking generally, they're probably going to accept it, then I'm going to have more confidence going forward and saying, this feels right. It is right for me. And that I'm not going to catastrophize that. The worst case scenario, what ifs, that generally it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The chances of you making a decision or setting a boundary that is so intensely permanent that it ruins your life is, probably not going to happen.
Very likely. Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
So
excellent. So to not catastrophize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing about internal boundaries, which is going to apply across the board, but a lot of times we say to ourselves, I can't do this anymore. I've said that a million times.
Yes.
Like every day before school.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and maybe that's true. Maybe you can't. But if you can reframe it with, I can't do this the same way anymore, then you're going to start looking for, where is my power? What adjustments can be made so that we don't have to continue down this road to burnout or resentment?
That one, by the way, for me is like a golden nugget, because I can't do it the same way anymore.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like I'm burning a bridge and I'm cutting things off, but it just says it has to look different for me. And that doesn't mean the relationship is gone or the interaction's gone. It just needs to look and feel different.
Yeah.
That feels safe. Like that feels like, oh, that's a great step into boundary land if I'm not used to doing them. So that's excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Well, John, I love those thoughts. Boundaries is not something that we're good at. It's something that is a work in progress for most of us. We often weren't modeled boundaries. And again, as a society and living in one of the most agreeable states, there's a reason it's really hard for us. But I want to go back on a couple of things that you said and just recap for our listeners. That boundaries, I loved when you said boundaries are like a corral. that we keep things outside and inside. So the relationship can exist, and that people can thrive in their environments, right? The corrals for animals, but that there's an ability to thrive that can happen. I love that visual was helpful for me. And that boundaries are an essential and fundamental ingredient for self-respect. Such a great reminder. Like, we cannot not have boundaries and really respect ourselves, the relationship, or the other person.
Yeah.
So important. Yeah. I love the quote by Gabor Mate. I know I had you say it a few times, but I'm going to say it again because I thought it was so good. Do you want to say it again? Go ahead.
If I don't stumble over my words again.
You got it.
Okay. If you have to choose between guilt and resentment, choose guilt every time. Resentment is soul suicide.
So good. So good. And such an important reminder that being clear is kind.
Yeah.
And that, again, we catastrophize, and we don't need to. That often boundaries that we set can and often will be received okay.
Yeah.
The relationship can be intact. And that saying, I can't do this anymore, doesn't mean the relationship's over. It just means it needs to change a little bit, and I'm okay with that. So thank you so much for your thoughts, for your insights. I really think you gave so many nuggets that our listeners can apply right away to their lives. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I really hope that our listeners will listen and actually apply this, because I know that it can change lives. Like, understanding boundaries and being boundaried, really, and I don't mean that like flippantly, it can change lives.
Yeah.
I mean it.
Oh, for sure.
Can change your life because it changes relationships.
Yeah, it's often the foundation of what we teach as therapists.
Yep.
And fundamentally, we need to practice trust in ourselves in setting boundaries, and practice trusting other people.
Amen.
That they can handle this.
Trust ourselves, trust others. And also, when a boundary comes to us from somebody else, that we're open to it and we receive it with grace.
Yeah.
Right? It goes both ways.
Yeah. And sometimes we have to close a door in order for the right one to open. So there will be times when you hold a boundary and someone won't accept it, and they need you to be in this particular box in order for them to want to be around you, and they may leave. So there will be grief with that.
Absolutely.
There may be guilt, but recognize that when you're having boundaries for yourself, you're not going to fall back into the same type of relationship that letting this person go will allow the right people in.
Yes, I love that. Letting this person go will allow the right person in. And there's grief, and there can be grief when that happens. And that's something that you can get through as well. Yeah. Right.
But the best, healthiest people, the best role models you can think of, they all have boundaries.
All. Absolutely. And again, one thing that you said that I want to remind our listeners is listen to your body. Your body's going to tell you when something's off, when there's a boundary that needs to be set. Pay attention and don't ignore your body, because it's giving you a signal for a reason. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, John, thank you so much for being here. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope this episode had the nuggets that I actually know it had to help you in your life and in your relationships. And until next time, take care. That's a wrap for today on the Therapist Question Box. I'm Lindsay Schiss. Thanks for listening. And remember, every question you ask is an opportunity to learn and grow. Brought to you by Therapy Utah.
Hey, this is Kathy Kinghorn. I'm an owner at Therapy Utah. If you'd like to book with one of our trauma-trained therapists, go to www.therapyutah.org. Thanks for listening.